Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code Stardust to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
Hi, this is Claudia Gray, the author of several Star Wars books, and you are listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. May the Force be with you.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
It's time for our weekly look at Star Wars news. But before we dive into the latest from the galaxy far, far away, Jay, where can we be found on social media?
Well, you can be found in this galaxy. We can be found in this galaxy on X, Facebook, and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is aligned. The signal is boosted to maximum output. The shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. This is the week's Star Wars news, and it's dominated by one big story, and that is that there is no second season for The Acolyte coming. It has been canceled by Lucasfilm and Disney, according to all the major outlets: Deadline, The Hollywood Reporter, Variety, IG, IO9 and Gizmodo. They've all reported this and confirmed it with Lucasfilm. And so we will not be getting a second season. Jay, you and I started to talk about this, but then we decided to save it for the show. And because we didn't want to do the show before the show. What's your reaction to that? What do you think?
Wow. Well, I'm all over the place, quite honestly. And when this news first broke, I started seeing it, on those little Google News cards. And at first I thought, oh, it's just clickbait, blah, 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 blah. And then I started seeing all the usual suspects, like you were talking about, Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, all of those. And so that's why when I texted you, I was like, oh my gosh. And you're like, yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, part of me is very surprised because it really did seem like the fans that loved it really, really loved it. And there was some amazing, amazing things about this show. But then it kind of doesn't surprise me in a way because there was a ton of backlash. And, I don't know, I'm sure you have more information than I do because you're always more up on this kind of stuff than me. But as far as the viewership goes, I know we just had the D23 and all of the earnings, quarterly earnings reports and that type of thing. So I'm assuming that it probably just wasn't viable financially to continue. But one thing I will say was I was actually talking about this with my students the other day because I have a few students at my high school in my classes, and we were in our homeroom and I mentioned this, and one of the girls said, oh my gosh, really? It's canceled? That was the one show I really liked. And a few other ones were saying, oh yeah, I really liked that show too. So I just thought, okay, is this a show that was resonating a lot more with the younger crowd? But that's not what is driving, the ultimate yay or nay, when it comes to keeping these shows going. But I just thought that was really kind of an interesting thing that the ones that like Star Wars or like the shows really, really liked this one. So like I said, I was kind of surprised on one hand, but then again, not surprised on the other hand. But I mean, what do you think? How'd you feel?
Well, okay, I like The Acolyte. I thought it had, as we discussed on all reviews, some incredible action scenes. I think that's like some of the best things they had going for it. A Wookiee Jedi, that was awesome. What they were doing with the Stranger and then, the Plagueis appearance and all that type of stuff, very cool. but it was not my favorite Star Wars. And, I had nothing particularly against it. It just wasn't, it didn't blow me away like The Mandalorian did. Okay.
Sure.
And so there's that. But you're right. You touched on something there, that this show meant an awful lot to certain people. And I
Mhm.
have not been able to find a common denominator on what that group of people is. But it did really find a special place for some people. And that's fantastic. And I love that for them. And so for them, I'm especially disappointed. I would love to have seen a second season just because of everything they set up at the end of the first season. The story, say what you will about it. I thought it shined in some places and needed some work in others. But that tease of Darth Plagueis, and then getting to see the tease of Yoda, and
Mhm.
spoilers if you haven't finished watching this from, about 5-6 weeks ago, and, the potential connection, or the connection between Vernestra and the stranger, and what was going on between the Jedi and the Senate, seemed like there were so many things that were ripe for development in a season two. And I was eager to get that. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, for that reason, I'm disappointed it's not getting a second season. And also, what are we getting in the way of upcoming Star Wars content on Disney Plus? Let's think about this for a second. We know we're getting Skeleton Crew in
Mhm.
December.
Mhm.
Season 2 of Andor comes sometime next year. But
Mhm.
beyond that, the only thing we know that's coming at some point is a season 2 of Ahsoka.
Mhm.
And we don't know when.
Right.
Dave Filoni's busy on The Mandalorian and Grogu right now. There's zero chance this show is coming next year. I think it's unlikely to come in 2026 unless they finish principal photography and production on The Mandalorian and Grogu sometime, soon, and then turn their attention to that. And then, 2027. But and there's no new animation show to succeed The Bad Batch announced right now. So what's going on? I mean, it's not that I need to know everything coming for the next 3 years, but I'm kind of used to having more of a roadmap for Disney Plus on these type of things. And here we are. We kind of know the next two shows and where we're gonna get them, and then Ahsoka at some undetermined date in the future.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns out there right now, and I know we had talked about the idea that there was some kind of an animation job posted at Lucasfilm on Disney
Hmm.
Jobs, and so we were speculating, ooh, could that be the beginning kindling of some sort of new animation show? But you're right. I mean, we've got nothing concrete for sure. But yeah, I'm with you. Just backstepping for just a second. I'm very sad for those that really did love the Acolyte, and I've gone on record by saying, as you, it definitely wasn't my favorite Star Wars, but there was a lot of great things that came out of it. And to answer your question, I think yeah, because as far as what's coming next, we know that we've got a couple of books that are going to, feature some characters here and there. And I don't even, and feature is actually a pretty strong word. I mean, we've got that one with Yord and Jecki that it mentions that they're going to be in the novel by Tessa
Hmm.
Granton, but we talked about that in the news show that that doesn't mean they're going to be a focal character. And then, some of these other things that you have in our notes here too, Kalnaka's getting a one shot. The Acolyte Wayseeker by Justina Ireland's coming out, and then Kelnaka is going to be joining Keeve Trennis in this ongoing High Republic comic. So there is more things out there, but as far as taking the story forward from the end of the season, I don't know. I mean, I would hope that they would find their audience maybe in print form and that there may be some other projects that could potentially be launched in lieu of a season 2 and that we may be getting that at some point so that way those fans that really do love the show and really are wanting more from everything that you mentioned that we got cliffhangered at the end
Hmm.
that are going to get some resolution and some closure in that way but yeah, there's a lot of question marks for sure.
Well, see, now I'm wondering if all of that Acolyte time material is even going to happen at this point.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, the Kalnaka one shot's coming out September 4th. So that's
That's a done
probably
deal, yeah.
printed and ready to go. They just got to ship it at this point because here we are at the end of August. But Wayseeker, I mean, how far is Justina Ireland into that? And, the Tessa Gratton's book, again, how far is she into that? And is it worth putting out tie-in material for a series that's over, and they've decided not to I don't know, a very loose relationship to when they blew up the Razor Crest right after they finished
Right?
the funding for the HasLab Razor Crest thing. But
Oh, rip.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I don't know. I'm just curious about that. You can put Kelnaka in the ongoing High Republic comic, and that's fine. That character was popular, and it's from what I can tell so far that comic's not dependent on that one character. So
Mhm.
great, but okay, it's just some other things about this though. This first season of the Acolyte cost 180 million dollars, and that's huge. You brought up earlier the ratings on this, and they're all over the place depending on which rating service
Mhm.
that you use. I read some of the articles that were out there about the cancellation on this, and according to like the Nielsen ratings, which are of course the big ones that everyone's been looking to for decades, indicated that it ranked very high for streaming for the first couple episodes, but then its ratings kind of dwindled as the series went on, which was kind of perplexing to me because I thought the series got better as it went along. But I guess not everyone agreed, and that's fine.
Mhm.
And yeah, if you got $180 million to produce one season of a television show, and that was what, 8 episodes? That's pricey. You got to
Yeah.
have a return on that. As to this thought of wrapping up some of these things or exploring some of these stories in print, I'm very curious. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to do it, but I really want to see Darth Plagueis on screen.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
I don't know that I want that story in print. And that I don't want to hang it everything that my desires for a second season on just Darth Plagueis, because if that's all it is, then you might as well forget it, because that's not enough to carry a show. At least the way I'm envisioning it. And but what is going on with Plagueis and the Stranger and Osha, and how's that all going to play out? Is Osha really an acolyte, kind of like Asajj Ventress was an acolyte to Count Dooku? And or is Chimera really an acolyte? What is all these relationships? There's so many things that are all unsaid. What happened between Vernestra and Chimera?
Right.
I'd love to know the answer to that. And yeah, we get it. We're getting all these books and stuff that's tie-in material, but I really don't expect the answers there. And that's not to say that those stories aren't worth it because they don't have that stuff. I mean, that's still technically the High Republic era, and I'm a fan of it, so I'll read those things. But I just wouldn't be terribly surprised if Justina Ireland and Tessa Gratton got moved to other projects. Kind of
Mhm.
like when Adam Christopher was moved to Shadow of the Sith instead of writing a Mandalorian tie-in novel.
Oh, yeah.
Now, of course, it's not really like that because they decided they wanted to do the Mandalorian show story on screen as opposed to having books and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But the point being is if they've got contracts with these two, perhaps they could just shift them over to telling some other public story.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, everything that you said brings up a lot of really great points. And I don't know the budget for any of the other Disney Plus shows, but yeah, I think I remember us talking about that in one of the other news shows, that The Acolyte was going to have the biggest, or if not close to the biggest budget of any Star Wars show. I just remember Kenobi in comparison was like half that, I want to say,
Hmm.
as far as the budget goes. I do remember that, but I don't know where it lands in terms of the budgets for the other shows. I'd be interested to see that, actually. I'm sure that exists someplace. But at any rate, so yeah, again, they just must not have been getting the return. And I'm with you. I would much rather see a live action Plagueis story than to get something in print, for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, live action trumps everything. We love our books, we love our comics, and we'll gobble it up regardless, but it's always great to see those things in live action. So,
Yeah. I'm
yeah.
wondering how much of the Acolyte was done in the volume compared to like the
Mhm.
Mandalorian stuff to jack up that budget so high in
Mhm.
there. And I know at D23 they had a whole lot of opportunities for fans to go experience the volume. They had people giving like on the floor presentations about it, and then you could step into it and see how it worked and how the cameras changed everything. And that been quite fantastic. But that it's a cost saving device. You don't have to go on location to all these places. But I kind of got the feeling they were on location at a lot of places to do the Acolyte.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as
I
part of
think
it.
you're right.
Now, the other thing that this is making me wonder is a Lucasfilm shifting away from as much Disney Plus content in order to focus on movies, or are they kind of following Marvel's example by treating to kind of a less is more stance? Because look at what happened to Marvel. Deadpool and Wolverine is the only movie we're getting this year,
Mhm.
and we're getting Agatha all along. And did we have an earlier series this year for Marvel? I can't remember. Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't tell you because I know there were some of the more I don't wanna use the word obscure because it's obscure to me, but there might be big fans out there of,
Sure.
some things, but I don't remember one, let's just put it that way.
Right. But now Marvel is getting ready to jack up their production again, and we're going to get. I think there's 3 movies scheduled for next year. We've got Fantastic Four. There is what's the other one too? Blade, I think, is still technically on the schedule for next year, and I feel like there's a third one, but I can't think of what it is off the top of my. Captain America: Brave New World. Those are the 3 coming next
Mhm.
year. I don't know what series are coming next year. I know there's Deadpool, and at some point we're getting the Ironheart thing. This is not a Marvel podcast, but um, point
For
being
comparison.
is okay. So they're getting back to 3 movies per year, and they've been able to sustain that. They just haven't been putting out the quality that they wanted. But we were getting 3 movies a year and 3 or 4 series on Disney Plus and everything like that. But they are pulling back from as much Disney Plus content on
Mhm.
there. So, anyways, point being is I wonder if Star Wars is starting to follow that model. Because right now you've got all these movies that have been announced or discussed and in various stages of production or development. We know we're getting the Mandalorian and Grogu that started
Mhm.
filming. We just talked about the clip that they showed at D23. We're
Right.
still waiting to hear more about James Mangold's New Jedi Order or the Rey movie, Dawn of the Jedi is what everyone's been calling it. We still
Mhm.
know Dave Filoni is planning on doing his Mandoverse movie, which everyone's tentatively calling Heir to the Empire. Sean Levy
Right.
is developing
Yep.
a Star Wars movie, which I really want to see after having seen Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
And then Patty Jenkins was talking about owing Lucasfilm script for her Rogue Squadron.
Right.
I still don't count on seeing that movie, but you know, I'll save my cynicism for later. And then, of course, there is the Taika Waititi project, which is looking for a third act. Last time we heard.
Right. Yep. So that's 7 different projects for movies that could
Mm-hmm.
potentially or we know are confirmed.
Right, and
So, yeah.
there may or may not be a Lando movie in development. So,
Yeah.
with Donald Glover,
Yeah.
but the release schedule has 2 movies in 2026 still. Mandalorian and Grogu coming in, I think it's May, and then I think a December movie as well, which I believe is supposed to be the New Jedi Order uh, movie. So I think I got that wrong. Dawn of the Jedi is the James Mangold, and New Jedi Order is the Rey movie. I think I may have said it backwards because I have it reversed in my notes. Anyways, just to clarify that. But the point being is is that what they're doing? And they don't necessarily owe me an explanation, but it is just kind of a weird shift that we've had where it seemed like we were always looking forward to 3 series per year, 2, 3 series per year, an animated series, and 2 live actions or whatever. And now we got Skeleton Crew coming up and season 2 of Andor, and beyond that, radio silence.
Right. Well, I wonder if some of that too is that the pendulum from the pandemic is finally starting to swing back the other way. And they're starting to see more sales from movie tickets than they were within the past couple of years. And so,
Hmm.
it just made sense to release a lot of things on streaming services because that's where your audience was. Everyone was staying at home. But people are starting to get back into the theaters now, hopefully. And maybe that's what they're seeing, the trend going forward.
That's not a bad thought. Lucasfilm has no experience with that because they haven't had any movies since the pandemic. But
Right.
the parent company, Disney, of course, has.
Mhm.
And they've struggled to get movies over that $1 billion mark since the pandemic hit. This year they've got 2, Inside Out 2, and now Deadpool and Wolverine. How many times can I say Deadpool and Wolverine on a Star Wars podcast? Um, as a side, have you
Oh,
seen it
well,
yet?
great. I finally got to see it last weekend. Yes, it's fantastic.
Okay, good. Yeah, I watched it for a second time last weekend. Now
Oh,
that you
good for
mention it.
you.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, I loved it, and I'm really excited now for a Sean Levy movie. As I was just saying a moment ago, I think he could do something fantastic if he wanted to. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, just getting back to the topic at hand, it's the I'm not. I'm not crestfallen. I'm not upset that there's not a second season. Just mildly disappointed that we don't get the resolution to those storylines. I guess I think I'd be more bummed if they suddenly announced that they were canceling Mandalorian and Grogu.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, I always want more Star Wars content. But I think the mandate from Disney is to they reverse course back when Disney Plus was launched to the point you were just making. It was get as much stuff on that platform as possible, do the direct to consumer route, but it turned out not to be profitable to do that way. And so they've kind of had to retreat from quantity back into quality to ensure that. And they found that their biggest drivers on the platform are a couple of series like The Mandalorian. And then when they finally released the movies that were in the theaters on that
Mhm.
platform.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, yeah, those are all good points. The only thing just talking about The Mandalorian and Grogu, I saw something not too long ago where it's actually going to be premiering the same time as Avengers Doomsday. Does that concern you at all for box office tickets? Because Solo did the same thing, if you remember. It had
what,
to
being caught
premiere.
between two Marvel movies?
Yes.
Not
So,
really, and here's why. I like Solo, you like Solo, but of the Disney era Star Wars movies,
mhm,
it's not close to my favorite of those 5 there, and it also was coming, off the heels of what was The Last Jedi, right? And and those other 2 movies were super anticipated. Yeah, I mean, the Avengers movie is gonna be highly, highly anticipated, but people really like The Mandalorian too. And not that people don't like Han Solo, it never had the buzz that The Mandalorian and Grogu have.
mhm. That's a good point. And you know
Mm.
what I think is kind of interesting as well, and kind of funny and ironic is the fact that Pedro Pascal is in both movies. Because 'Cause
Yeah.
isn't he playing Reed Richards in the
That's a good point.
So, he's all over the place right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that new Gladiator movie. That one's gonna be a good one too.
Oh,
With
yeah,
Bennett.
November, right? I believe, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. And real quickly too, while we were talking, I did the old, Gemini Google thing, and you were asking about the whether or not the volume was used for the Acolyte,
Mhm.
and the AI says no, the Acolyte did not use the volume as its visual effects technology. So Chris Teague said that the decision to not use the volume was made early on because the sets and locations would better suit a more handmade aesthetic. So you were right.
Yeah, and I like the sets.
Oh
I
yeah.
that the opening scene of The Acolyte when, May wanders into that cantina and fights Master Andara, was fantastic. That place looked amazing, and then some of the other places on Coruscant looked great. The lot of great locations, shots, and then sets that they built for that. But why? Why wouldn't you use the volume? I
Right?
mean, it's there, it's developed, it's been used, and I mean, is there just competition for it? Because I know, I guess they're starting to use it for Marvel and other things as well. But I don't know. I feel like you could have cut the price tag down on that, and then maybe. But then again, how much of a factor is that really? Is it really? Because if they wanted to do season 2 of The Acolyte, they could have just told Leslie Helen and the people who produced it, "You got to do it cheaper. Do it on the volume."
Mhm. Mhm.
And if they didn't want to, they could walk away. And I don't know, maybe that happened. Who am I to say?
Oh,
But at the
yeah.
same time, it's just, whatever it was, they decided that the return was not worth it. So,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and I'm all for practical effects and practical sets and things like that, but I mean, even Ewan McGregor was saying how much more of a worthwhile experience it was even as an actor to be able to have that,
Mhm.
at their disposal when they were filming, so
Yeah, well, Yes, when you're
He was
not
used to
having to
green
use your
screens though.
imagination to see what's off in the
Right.
distance, on a blue screen or a green screen.
Yes,
I can see.
he came from very impractical effects. So,
Right,
but
right,
the point being is just that the volume is still a pretty amazing piece of technology.
yeah. All right, well, it's a bummer that it's not coming back, but we've got more Star Wars content coming, and hopefully we'll get more announced when we, are firmed up anyway when we get to Celebration next year. Because
Mhm.
or between now and then, I mean, there's several months. We're looking at what, 8 months to Celebration still at this point. So 7, it doesn't matter, but there's still plenty of time to announce other things, and just I want to know kind of what to expect in the next couple of
Yeah,
years.
for
So
sure. Well,
yeah,
one other thing that you have in our notes that I wanted to address too is that, with Star Wars Celebration Japan coming up, I mean, Manny Jacinto was just at D23 and he's slated to be at Star Wars Celebration. And not
yeah,
to say that that's taking anything at all away from his appearance, because people that love the show are still going to want to meet him. And, it's not that just because the show's canceled, he shouldn't be there, but he's gonna get a lot of questions, so I feel for the guy.
yeah. I know there was a number of podcasts that were at D23 and got to do kind of like an interview or something with him, and I heard that interview on a couple different places, and eh, I'm pretty sure he didn't know that there wasn't going to be a season 2 at that time. And so this timing is just really unfortunate.
Yeah, it
He
really
was there
is.
representing the Acolyte. Seems like he was all in on doing it, and the people that he met with were just loving him. He's a cool guy. On top of that, I've loved all the behind the scenes stuff that StarWars.com has been putting out, especially when they're showing his training regimen to get ready
Oh,
for those
yeah,
saber duels. And I think we talked about
fantastic.
those. Yeah, that's all been
Uh-huh.
fantastic. But then just kind of yanked the rug out from underneath them like this is really
Yeah.
weird timing on all
It
this.
is, and I feel for him because I'm with you. I mean, I can't imagine that just from everything that I've seen that this was something that he expected. And I feel bad for him because I'm sure he was looking forward to reprising his role
Hmm.
and, putting some closure and some answers onto what we saw at the end of season 1. So it's got to be a heartbreak for him as well as the rest of the cast and crew.
Yeah. Well, I mean, never say never. There's always a chance that some other story could show up in the future that has this character in it. We'll see,
Sure.
but it's not looking promising at the moment.
Mhm.
So, all right. Well, then, yeah, that's our news for the week. Thank you all for joining us for us. I wish it could have been a more fun topic, but this is the story that's been dominating Star Wars discussion for the past week. But anyways, again, thank you for joining us and talking. As we talked this news through and kind of explored our thoughts on it. We'd love to hear from you and what you think about all this. And Jay will be giving you some of our contact information here in a bit. But I just want to remind you, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the podcast. That's the best way to get all our future episodes as they're released 3 times a week. We do the news at the end of the week right now, and then we usually have some sort of review and other discussion during the week on Mondays and Wednesdays. And we'd love it if you could join us for all of that. I also like to remind you can find all of our past episodes over on retrozap.com, which is home to the Retrozap Podcast Network and features such shows as Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, Warp Trails, Animini Cast, and others. We're always looking out for new ratings and reviews on whatever podcatcher it is that you use. Always checking Apple Podcasts for new reviews, and I'd love to read some more. Or if you've left a review for us someplace else and it's a good one, let me know. Email it to us or point it out to us, and I'll make sure that I get it on a future episode of the show. So, with all that having been said, Jay, you remind everybody what our social media contacts are.
Yes, absolutely. It's very easy to find us. And if you are just finding us for the first time on this episode, welcome to the Podcast Stardust family. And for our regular listeners, as you know, you can find us on Facebook, X, and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we also have oodles of other places that you can bebop around and look for us as well. One of those is Pinterest, and we have tons of boards over there. And we have 2 different YouTube outlets. So we have our YouTube regular outlet as well as our YouTube music. And you can head over to both of those, leave reviews, and also interact with us over there as well. So we'd love it if you do that. And then we also have another place to interact with us, and that is on our Discord room, which is part of the RetroZap Discord server. So as Dennis was running down just a minute ago, there's tons of different shows on the server. So if you want to get in on any kind of geekery conversation, that's the place to go. And the link for that will be in our show notes, and it'll take you right to where you need to go. And if you want to support the show, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that for us. So we'd love it if you would pick up something from TeePublic. We have a storefront over there that has 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of goods, from t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and home goods, including tote bags, wall hangings, and the like. And once again, the link to that is in our show notes. And one last referral is our Saber Masters partnership. So if you are in need of a battle ready lightsaber, or 2 or 3 to practice all of your moves, you can head over to sabermasters.com, or once again, hit up that link in our show notes. And if you do happen to get something, make sure that you put in the code Stardust at checkout, and that will earn you an extra $10 off of your purchase. And like I said, it does help to support the show.
All right, Jay, before we go, you want to remind everybody what you got going on with cosplay?
Sure. So you can always catch me on my Instagram, which is over at j.snipscosplay. And right now, I've been saying it's the calm before the storm. So I've got some events coming up here in the fall. And as soon as I get those dates confirmed and lined up for sure, I'll be getting those out to everybody. But in the meantime, you can catch me as Ahsoka, Hera, 2 different versions, both from the Rebel series as well as the Ahsoka series, as well as the Fourth Sister and a few other things in between, as well as my Mandalorian original concept based on Tahiri Vela. And Dennis, why don't you tell everybody about the roundtable discussion that you just did recently on a podcast, and what podcast that was?
Sure. So I was a guest on the 100th episode of Reading Between the Reels, hosted by our friend Craig Dickinson, who's been on Podcast Stardust before, and his co-host Justin and Corey, along with several other podcasters you likely know: Ross Holleben, Dave Motters, Thomas Tribble, Dan Zaire, Corey Clubb, and I feel like I'm forgetting someone, and I am sorry for that. But we had an opportunity to talk about what first movies we saw, scariest movie we ever saw, things like that. Movie if we were on a desert island that we take with us, yada, yada, yada. But fun episode, great discussion. I've been listening to it today. It came out this past Wednesday. You can find that on all your podcatchers of choice. So yeah, definitely go check that out.
Sweet.
But upcoming on the show on Monday, we'll be getting back into the Clone Wars rewatch with a look at episode 3 of season 1, which is Shadow of Malevolence. And then on Wednesday, it's Jay's monthly feature, World Between Worlds, where she rounds up recent finds from the world of Star Wars fashion and lifestyle products. So with that having been said, thanks for listening to episode 772 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend, and until next time, may the Force be with you.